Welcome to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Dan Abrams.
I'm Brian Ross.
I'm Angelica Spano.
I'm Jesse Weber.
I'm Brian Buckmeyer, along with Terry Austin. The California Supreme Court has overturned Scott Peterson's death sentence, and he's now arguing for a new trial in the deaths of his wife Lacey and their unborn son. Anjanette Levy is here to explain the evidence his family and legal team says could clear his name.
Yeah, Brian, Peterson has been on California's death row since 2005. The state's high court, of course, vacated that death sentence and said that a new sentencing hearing had to be held, but a new trial could also be on the horizon.
If there was ever a case that needed to be reversed on the guilt phase, that's the case.
Defense attorney Mark Garrigus represented Scott Peterson at his trial in 2004. He thinks it's likely Peterson will get a new trial and cites evidence in Peterson's habeas petition that could support his claims of innocence, including a 17-year-old conversation between prison inmates overheard by a corrections officer.
This Lieutenant Aponte recording where some inmates were talking about Lacey related to the burglary across the street, which was astonishing to me. Never in my career have I had anything quite that outrageous, whether it was coincidental, incidental, or not.
Garrigus said information about that call was not turned over by prosecutors until the day Peterson was convicted. Peterson's petition says a Lieutenant Aponte recorded the prison call between two brothers and then lost it. Peterson claims one of the men said his friend broke into a home in Lacey Peterson's neighborhood the morning she disappeared, and that he saw Lacey after the time prosecutors claimed she was killed. Police had claimed the burglary happened 2 days later on December 26th.
I would think generally, if you're going to commit a burglary, you're not going to do it when the world is watching on the day after Christmas across the street. And mind you, I've been there. We're not talking a large highway. This is a small residential street.
16 years after Peterson was convicted, his case is getting a lot of attention.
I think if people step back and look at the evidence, they're going to see this crime isn't solved.
2020 is taking an in-depth look at the case this week, with interviews from Peterson's sister-in-law, Janie, who's made it a mission to collect information she believes will exonerate Peterson.
There was information that I had that nobody knew or heard.
Amber Fry, the woman with whom Peterson was having an affair and testified at his trial, is also in the special. But the issue that may win a new trial for Peterson has to do with juror Rochelle Neese. Peterson's attorneys say she lied on her questionnaire about being a victim of domestic violence.
She did not follow the judge's orders. She basically said, I'm here to get justice for Lacey and little man, as she called Connor.
Now, the California Supreme Court sent this case back to the trial court and ordered the court to look into these alleged issues with that juror, Rochelle Neese. Peterson, meanwhile, will be back in court in June.
Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily.
We do not believe that he got a fair shake.
So-called sex cult leader Keith Raniere is recovering from COVID-19 in prison. The defense attorneys preparing his appeal.
There are more pieces to each one of these stories. We're not downplaying the allegations.
A California man accused of murdering his estranged wife is now accused of threatening a prosecutor and his family. The defense disagrees.
I do not believe that he's in danger.
Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Convicted sex cult leader Keith Raniere is recovering from COVID-19 as his defense prepares their appeal.
He started exhibiting symptoms, endured a full-blown COVID-19 breakout, if you will, or shakes, fevers, the whole 9 yards.
Criminal defense attorney Joseph McBride represents Keith Raniere. McBride, a frequent guest on the Law&Crime Network, believes Raniere contracted COVID-19 being transferred between prisons from New York to Arizona.
Our team had previously requested from the district court for Mr. Raniere to be able to stay back on the East Coast so that his defense team could have access to him.
Raniere is serving a 120-year sentence for sex trafficking and racketeering. Prosecutors say the self-help guru known as Vanguard recruited celebrities and socialites in his company called NXIVM, then forced women to act as sex slaves.
Raniere
really, twisted people's trust in their need to find some meaning and hope in their lives in just the most insidious and devious ways.
Raniere has a new team of attorneys, including McBride, Jennifer Beaujean, who's also leading Bill Cosby's appeal, and Stephen Metcalf. They say they have grounds to overturn his conviction and sentence.
You have a legitimate business that's operating with hundreds of people who are benefiting from it and are actually gaining tremendous life experiences as a result of it and employed, and all of a sudden that becomes deemed a federal RICO. That federal RICO, the charges that it could relate to sex trafficking charges, 100% tainted the entire proceedings going forward, from the beginning to the end. It had chilling effects on the defense that could have been presented or that Keith could have presented.
You're talking about a person that over 15 victims came forward to testify against. 5 of women in his inner circle pled guilty to him exchanging sexual favors in NXIVM, his company, with these women and branding some of them, and the allegations of, I'm going to keep this piece of video of you to blackmail you in one way or another. That's not people's feelings, I would argue. That's just what came out. I don't see how that's like interpreted differently.
Yeah, but Brian, those weren't used as part of the government's proof. Those were used as a part of showing and establishing restitution, and how that ultimately led a judge to sentence this man to 120 years. So that impacted even the judge's view and ultimately led to that sentencing. The evidence presented at trial to produce and substantiate these charges was completely different than those victim impact statements. And that's what we are claiming was lacking at the trial level.
Actress Allison Mack and Seagram Liquor's heir Claire Bronfman both pled guilty to their roles in the group. As for Raniere, the court already imposed a $1.75 million fine, and prosecutors are seeking additional restitution for victims.
His crimes and the crimes of his co-conspirators ruined marriages, careers, fortunes, and lives.
There are a lot of questions. There are a lot of holes. We have a lot of questions about the FBI's work in this case. People here were hurt on some level. But the question is about criminality. The question is about proving each element of each crime beyond a reasonable doubt. We don't think that the government did that in this case. And I'm just going to sort of leave that answer right there.
A deputy DA in Los Angeles is trying to keep a man he prosecuted for murder behind bars over threats he made to kill him and his family. But as Anjanette Levy tells us, the man's attorney does not believe William Terry Bradford ever made the threats.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. You know, Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney John Lewin has been saying for many years that William Terry Bradford threatened to kill him and his family when he first got to prison back in 2002. Bradford is now 87 years old, and the California Parole Board says he should be released from prison. But his defense attorney says that he is not a danger.
I am here not as a representative of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. The opinions addressed are my own and my own only.
Lewin has made a career out of prosecuting cold case murders. He's prosecuting Robert Durst for the murder of his friend Susan Berman. Lewin says Bradford, whom he prosecuted in 2002 for the murder of his wife Joan 14 years earlier, made threats to another inmate when he first got to prison.
You know, I've done a lot of murder cases in my career, and that's the only time that I've ever had someone I prosecuted who has made a threat like that, and the only time that I've ever really thought that, you know, I had a reason to be concerned.
The Bradfords were in the middle of a messy divorce when Bradford shot Joan from behind in her home. Their children found their mother's body. Lewin says he and the children fear what could happen if Bradford is released.
The man was willing to throw his life away at age 55 when he had $1 million retirement. So now, you know, he's in his mid 80s with nothing to lose, and you want to parole him.
I will tell you that my position is that John Lewin's fear is absolutely not warranted.
Defense attorney Maya Ebick says that Bradford suffers from dementia and has limited mobility. She also points to polygraph test results for the inmate who claimed Bradford wanted to kill Lewin. He was deemed truthful months later when he said he did not hear Bradford threaten to kill Lewin, but had previously said Bradford wanted to kill him and his family.
Here is this anomaly in the course of a divorce, a contentious divorce. There is this murder, atrocious murder, absolutely. But Mr. Bradford was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, and that means just that.
Now, after receiving those polygraph documents from attorney Maya Emig, I went back to John Lewin. I showed them to him, and he said that he had been under the impression since back in 2002, 2003, that inmate passed the polygraph test when he was asked whether or not the Bradford had ever threatened to murder him and his family. And he thought that inmate said yes. He now sees that the inmate said no, he didn't hear that, and basically recanted those statements. Now, the inmate, Governor Newsom, he actually reversed the parole board's decision back in 2018 when the board said that Bradford should be released then. I contacted Newsom's office, and a spokesperson there said that they will again review this case very carefully.
One of the USA Gymnastics former head coaches has died by suicide hours after officials revealed 24 charges against him.
Brian, the news shocked survivors of Larry Nassar who have been long waiting for justice. I spoke with Sarah Klein, who investigators say might be the first victim of Nassar.
I grew up in small town Michigan, and at 5 years old, the girl down the street from me invited me to bring a friend day at our local gymnastics club. Apparently, I had a little bit of talent, and by 8 years old, I was getting ready to compete.
Sarah says that was when she met two men who would play major roles in her life: Olympic gold medal winning coach John Geddert and volunteer athletic trainer Larry Nassar.
And in a sense, we all grew up together. John Geddert was in his early 30s. Larry was in his 20s. I was 8. We were all starting out with our futures ahead of us, but things went very wrong.
Sarah says she had an intense regimen training 30 hours a week at Geddert's gym. Nassar was there to tape up her injuries.
I went to his wedding, right? He came to my birthday parties. It was somebody I loved and trusted, and our entire community loved and trusted.
It wasn't until she was 37 years old and read about gymnasts coming forward with sexual assault allegations in the Indy Star that Sarah realized what happened to her as a child.
To have that moment of, oh my God, that's what that was. And the entire paradigm of my life exploded.
Sarah is an attorney and used her knowledge of the criminal justice system to help guide hundreds of young athletes as they faced their abuser.
After my bath, you rewarded me for my generous participation in your study by having me lay naked on the treatment table in the living room of your sparse one-bedroom apartment as you massaged the entirety of my 12-year-old body, suggesting that I relax as you slipped your adult fingers in and out and in and out of my body.
At the time, Sarah was only known as victim number 125. Nassar was sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison for sexually abusing young girls.
You were the good cop to Coach John Geddert's bad cop. When he broke us mentally and physically, depriving us of water on a hot summer's day in the unair-conditioned gym, or pushing us to practice on broken bones, you were the one who stepped in.
USA Gymnastics suspended Geddert after testimony like Sarah's poured in. He retired in 2018. Then on Thursday, Michigan's Attorney General announced 24 criminal charges against Geddert, including human trafficking of a minor. The allegations are from 2008 to 2016, including the time Geddert was head coach of the U.S. Women's Olympic team, winning a gold medal in London. But as Geddert was scheduled to turn himself in and be arraigned in Eaton County Court, authorities say he committed suicide. Police found his body at an interstate rest area. The Attorney General nominee, Merrick Garland, said he supports releasing the results of the DOJ's handling of the investigation into the abuse.
It is about time. It is about time. We've been asking for that for so long. We still do not have answers, and we deserve answers. And we know that what happened was extremely corrupt.
Sarah decided to go public with her story at ESPN's 2018 ESPY Awards. Since then, she advocates for sexual assault survivors across the country.
When you're 8, your mind is not fully formed, and it can take decades to reconcile. We've been going state to state to attempt not only to extend the statutes going forward, but to provide these look-back windows.
This defendant has been brought to justice. I've just signed her death warrant.
Nassar is appealing his sentence, saying the judge was biased for allowing every accuser to give a victim impact statement. His request for a new judge has already been denied.
The only thing I ask you is to let go of that 12-year-old girl, give her permission to say it's okay, I didn't report it, because you know at 12, you are powerless.
I was victim 125. I am attorney Sarah Klein.
That's really powerful, Terry. Thank you. Joining us today is former federal prosecutor Gene Rossi. Gene, the thing that annoys me a little here, it seems like the prosecutors or the officers handled him with a little bit of kid gloves. Why was he able to turn himself in rather than them going out and arresting him, especially when we're talking about human trafficking charges?
Well, I'll tell you this right now. If it were federal charges and I was the prosecutor, I wouldn't give him a New York minute to think about it. I would have had him arrested at 6 a.m. or at any time during the day and night. What the state prosecutors did is extremely rare for this type of crime. They cut him a break, and I'm wondering if his former position of power may have influenced and clouded their judgment. He should have been arrested, not given the courtesy of self-surrender.
Yeah, not for these types of charges. That's peculiar. Terry, while these women will not see Geddert serve time for these charges, could they still have a civil case against him or his estate?
Yes, Brian, they could, because instead of bringing the case personally against Geddert, now that he's no longer with us, the case could be brought against the estate. We saw the exact same thing in the Jeffrey Epstein case. The women here are seeking damages for physical and mental emotional abuse that Geddert caused. I mean, the Attorney General even said that many of these women have sustained long damages because of what he's done. They have eating disorders. Some of them have even committed suicide. So, you know, the fact that these two men worked together really showed that they were hurting these women in many ways.
Thank you both for your contribution to the story. Of course, we'll keep an eye out to see if that civil case ever pops up.